like to go ahead and get started if we get everybody's attention, and welcome. It's so great to see so many people here in person, and so welcome to the City of Boise. Mayor McLean, welcome to you and your council members and team members. We're glad to have you.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to be here. And I think I'll just pass it right back to you. I appreciate that everybody's come. Look forward to the discussion today, and think we should jump right into it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know we've got a lot to cover, and we're going to start off here with Planning and Development Services Update, a presentation by Tim Keene. And I just saw, there you are. Welcome. Glad to have you. Yes.
And while Tim's getting set up, just a note, we have a couple of council members that are unable to make it today.
Mayor McLean, let us know. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me this chance. Can you hear me? Is this working?
No,
It doesn't seem like it's working.
It's green. It says go. I'll just try to speak up, but thank you for giving me this opportunity. Some of you, we met at your last joint meeting, which was right after I arrived here in Boise, and so thank you for giving me this chance to update you on where we are with the planning department. We're making some changes that we think are going to be very beneficial to the residents of the city and will give us a lot more capacity to kind of collaborate with ACHD and our other partners like ITD and Compass and VRT on all things related to transportation. I'll do this briefly, but just mention some changes that are relevant, most relevant to this group. One is that we're reshaping our planning group within the planning department. You probably know we do a variety of things in the planning department. Some of it is directly related to planning. Other things are related to the day-to-day things of permitting and zoning and development approval and this kind of thing. But within our planning group, we've had people like Karen Gallagher, who's here, and others that have had a transportation focus. One of the things that we felt strongly we needed to do, and in particular because the city and with the mayor's leadership has been concentrating on ways people can get around the city without driving, notably the recent pathways plan that the city has produced, that we have to be able to do a much better job kind of administratively within the government to further such things. So we're creating a group within planning called Mobility in Public Spaces, which will include those that are involved in transportation with the city, but it will expand that group, and we're in the process of hiring a director of this group. Let me explain for a minute the title of the group, Mobility in Public Spaces. We recognize that how important it is for Boise and this entire region that as we grow, more and more people that live here can drive less. When it comes to accomplishing any transportation goal, we feel strongly that is essential based on the history of cities, that it's important that as we're growing, of course everyone will drive, but if it's possible that for an average home, the number of car trips per day goes from 10 to 8, maybe even 6, we're accomplishing something because we're giving people options, we're addressing transportation in a more comprehensive way. And the way to do that such that more and more people will choose to walk or ride their bike or take public transportation has all to do with the quality of our public spaces. And so our Mobility in Public Spaces team will be concentrating on how we make great public spaces that are safe, that are inviting, that are enjoyable. And obviously the Pathways plan will be central to that for us. We're going to have to collaborate with you very closely on that. Some pathways are very engaged with ACHD assets, others aren't, but some do, and they often intersect or parallel one another. So we've got to be able to do a much better job of working with you on implementation of such facilities. So you and others, CCDC, of course, and other agencies. So that's one thing. We're creating this group. We will hire the director of that group within the next 30 days or so. Councilmember Sanchez, good to see you.
Welcome.
We'll hire that person very soon. We've got incredible candidates for it. We're also hiring within that group, right on the heels of that, a person to be dedicated to the pathways work. So we're really concentrating on bringing in more skilled professionals into that group. So that's one thing. The second thing I'll mention, which relates to the work of the planning department, and we've been in discussions with staff here at ACHD about, is the new zoning ordinance that we're preparing right now. So a status report on that. We've been through the first two phases of that called modules 1 and 2, which deal with how property would be zoned and the development regulations that would govern how things are designed and built. So that's modules 1 and 2. We're through that. We have kind of we're in a good place, I think, with the community, a much better place than we were 6 to 8 months ago, and feel good about going into the last phase, which is a very important one, around what's the process you have to follow to build in the city. You know, who's going to the Planning and Zoning Commission? How's the Design Review Commission involved? What goes to City Council? All those kinds of things, because the ordinance hasn't been updated, or the ordinance we have was created originally in 1966 with very different expectations about how the city would grow. We have an ordinance now that's about shaping the city differently, and we have to get back to, can we make the things that we want in the city, that we see as benefiting the city, easy to build? And so we will be seeking to do that in this last module. So this will be a very important one in terms of our success when it comes to the zoning ordinance. We will have public meetings in October related to this. Those meetings will bleed into November. That will be the conclusion of the public process around the new zoning ordinance draft. We will then fine-tune the work based on what we hear from the public and come back very early next year with the final draft of the ordinance and begin the official adoption process, which will go through the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council. So that will take, as you know, public hearings. It'll take a little bit of time, but the goal is that the new ordinance is in place in the summer of next year. We've got a July date we're shooting for to get the ordinance through City Council. So this is very important because obviously the relationship between land use and transportation is a fundamental one. We feel strongly that really land use should lead when it comes to transportation. If we build a city that is designed for people to have options for how they get around, then we're going to be successful. If we don't, based on what we've seen in every other city, then we will have less success. So this is a really important piece of work that the city's been working on for some time and will conclude soon. So that is my update on PDS. Happy to, if it's appropriate, take questions or even better comments on what I've said. Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We really appreciate that information. Look forward to having our teams work closely together. Any questions or comments before we go? Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, Mayor, and Tim. I appreciate this very much. I've been following the ordinance changes quite closely. We've had a number of issues arise over the last 10 years, but especially even in the last couple of years, where the city has wanted to move forward on a certain land use decision, but our policies have restricted that, have constrained your ability to do that. And I know as you're redoing your ordinance, you're looking at your own policies as to how they should change. And I am hopeful that you are doing a very deep dive into ACHD's policies and how they should change in order to address the land use needs. We've seen that at least 3 times in the last month with respect to ACHD's access management policies, and what I think are unfortunate decisions that then the city can't even appeal because our policies don't even allow you to appeal because the party is ACHD and the private party. And concerns from neighborhoods, you know, I think the areas I'm talking about, downtown and east end of Warm Springs. So that's one of several examples where essentially ACHD, while you have good intentions of wanting to do this when it comes to implementing, unless ACHD's policies change and we actually do a deep dive and allow the city to lead on land use, it constrains. It's a unique issue for Ada County, because in other counties around the state, of course, transportation policies are set by the city, but not here.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Commissioner. And that alignment between ACHD and the city on such policies, as you said, is essential. And we're going through that process right now to evaluate how we can bring them closer into alignment, because as I said, and as you said, you know, the land use part is, if it's not connected to our streets and our transportation decisions and policies, then we're not gonna be very successful. Yeah, thank you.
And I would just like to speak to, that's why it's so fortunate for both of our agencies to have such a good, strong working relationship now with our regular meetings. And so we look forward to that, to continue and have everybody work together so we come up with the best possible solutions going forward. So I think we all have the same goals, so yeah.
Great.
Thank you. Madam President?
Commissioner Pickering.
Thank you, Tim. Is there, aside from, obviously you guys approving this new ordinance, are there any other opportunities for us to work together on those alignment communication, strategy conversations? Or is it just really a staff-to-staff conversation? Or is there some value in having a more targeted workshop or work session so that we can talk more about this before we have to wait until your ordinance is finalized?
That would be
Certainly be open to that,
hugely
absolutely.
beneficial.
Yeah, I'll jump in, Madam Chair. I think that's a great suggestion and something that we could do. I looked to staff to figure out how best to manage that, both the planning and the interactions, because it'll depend on their ability to be prepared with the content. But do think that there's probably a good conversation to be had if we had a chance to just focus on that in of itself, and maybe some of those pressure points that the commissioner referred to, and that we know that our teams of both the city and ACHD are talking through.
Much like that one work session that we had recently at the city, in that type of environment, to have that free exchange.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate the update. All right, next we have a 5th and 6th Street two-way conversion presentation by Zach and Tim. I guess you're gonna stay here as well? Okay, all right.
Pulling up some slides here, I think, and
Welcome, Councilmember Sanchez. Good to see you.
And I think Mayor McLean is going to lead us off here. Mayor, do you want to introduce this to the commission?
It's funny you say that, because I was just wondering if I was supposed to jump in here and say a couple of things or not, and I wasn't sure if I told you that I wanted to, or if I just made that up. I appreciate this opportunity to have this on the agenda, because it brings not just the city and ACHD together, but brings the Urban Renewal District, CCDC, into the conversation. And we've heard loud and clear from businesses along 5th and 6th Street, and then of course businesses downtown in general, that the more conversions we can do, the better off the businesses are from a flow perspective, and then from residents, that it just gives more options for up and down movement on the way to and from work. So had asked that CCDC be involved in this from a funding and partner perspective, and we're really glad. I want to say thanks to Bree and all of the team members from all the agencies that have worked on this, because it's a great opportunity for us to work together to impact and really support business downtown. And just on a different topic, since I have before, that's why this one today is really important. But I just want to highlight some of the advancements we've made together by being willing to collaborate. The grant that ACHD received from RAISE for the bench work is key. It'll help communities, it'll help folks move around, but it'll also help business. And the grant that you all supported through VRT for State Street with CCDC as a partner is also key, because it'll do all the same things. It helps us expand transit, it'll help us provide economic development support to new areas for development, and support those businesses as well as homeowners and residents that live along the State Street corridor. So I see this as another opportunity for all of our agencies to work together to benefit the economy and our residents.
Well said. Concur. Thank you.
Okay. Zach and I are gonna do this together, and I'm gonna start. We'll kind of tag team this today. This is something you've been working on for quite some time, and Zach's got a lot more experience with it than I do, but I did want to introduce a few things related to the 5th and 6th Street conversion. To start, let me use the slide. Okay. So here's what we'll do. We're gonna give an overview of what this project is, the benefits of it, the timeline associated with it, some recent updates on conversations regarding the conversion, and then Zach will get into also the specifics of the proposal. There is the need for us to work together on this and direction from the commission that is needed. Regarding the benefits of the two-way conversion, I just, don't want to state the obvious too much, but this just relates to the intrinsic value of having a grid, right? The value of being in an urban area and having a grid of streets is that you have so many ways around. I mean, that's what makes a city work, right? That you have all these opportunities to move about. The more you have, the better. The more ways around the city that you have in an urban condition that's getting denser, the better place you have. The more vibrant place you have, the more successful the businesses are. And that has to do with being able to move about the city on all these streets in both directions in every case that's possible. And you all have had great success making conversions of streets downtown over the past several years that have converted from one-way to two-way. Congratulations, there's been a lot of great work done on this recently. So now it's to 5th and 6th Streets. And so there's just the navigation part of the value of these conversions. Then there's the safety part, a disjointed grid where you have these awkward one-way streets just creates opportunities for confusion and accidents. That's just part of what happens. You're not navigating the city in ways that are intuitive. You're constantly having to navigate awkward situations that are one way and suddenly you're back to two-way. So there's the safety aspect of it. And then there's just the emergency access piece of it, that there's more ways for emergency responders to get around, and we're not having to go multiple blocks to get to a location. So just the access that it gives to us, and the mayor mentioned this, and a hugely beneficial aspect of this is that in a city, in an urban place, two-way travel just supports a vibrant business district. I mean, that's what makes locating in a downtown area in an urban place different than being on a highway in a suburban place. In two ways, that's what makes a city what it is. So the incredible benefit to the businesses as well. And I'm going to step aside here and let Zach go through this history.
Thank you, Tim. Madam Mayor, Madam President, Commissioners, and Council members. So yeah, just wanted to provide a bit of historical context for a refresher to everyone, but really to focus on the new commissioners and new council members that may not have all the history. So back in 2013, ACHD produced the Downtown Boise Implementation Plan, or DBIP, which was a multi-year, multi-project, comprehensive set of improvements focused on the downtown area that really focused on pavement maintenance, streetscape enhancements through other partnerships with CCDC, and then one-way to two-way conversions. Out of that plan, 7 corridors were identified for one-way to two-way conversions listed here. Those included 3rd Street and 4th Street, which formulated a one-way couplet at the time, 11th Street and 12th Street, which were also a one-way couplet, and 13th and 14th, again, a one-way couplet similar to 5th and 6th Street. Then Jefferson Street was the 7th. The two-way conversion of 5th and 6th was contemplated during the planning phase, but ultimately the plan stopped short of recommending conversion of them due to the perceived complexity of those two corridors and the need for further study, which happened just a couple years later. In 2016, ACHD completed the two-way feasibility study specific to 5th and 6th Street, which concluded that the conversion is feasible. That while delay may increase at the majority of intersections along both corridors, travel time on the southbound section of 6th Street in the PM would actually improve substantially. and that ACHD may want to consider some site-specific mitigation measures to help vehicle operations at key locations, namely left turn and right turn lanes throughout both corridors. Upon completion of that feasibility study, ACHD produced a concept alternatives analysis, which included broad public outreach and looked at a few different two-way alternatives. Those alternatives primarily differed in the amount of 5th Street that was converted, so full conversion or some portion of it being converted. In September of 2017, the Commission adopted the partial two-way conversion as the preferred alternative. Then in 2018, ACHD initiated the final design of the project of that preferred alternative and was progressing through some additional traffic analyses and discussions with the city about opportunities to reduce the amount of on-street parking which was impacted by those proposals. While no changes were officially made to the adopted alternative, the Commission did ask staff to look at ways to reduce the number of parking stalls eliminated through the project from approximately 50 down to a target of 24. Then in August of 2018, the staff produced a memo that presented 2 sub-alternatives to that preferred alternative. One just included the bare minimum amount of parking removed just to allow the two-way conversion to occur with some bus turning movements, and then a secondary sub-alternative hit a target of about 28 stalls removed. In 2019, is our understanding that ACHD eliminated the pavement maintenance component of the project, which resulted in ACHD reclassifying the project from a DBIT maintenance project to an economic development project, which did not have funding at the time. And as such, the project has sat idle since 2019. Fast forward to August of 2021, the city submitted a request letter to ACHD affirming the importance of the project and also identifying that they would like it to move forward to completion. They also identified that CCDC has increased its amount of funding for the project to over $2 million. So staff from the 3 agencies began coordinating, and in October 2021, ACHD staff indicated that due to the amount of work that staff at this agency has and the overall timeline it would take to work the project through the 5-year work plan process, it may be more feasible for CCDC to lead the project in the timeline that works with CCDC funding. So CCDC accepted that invitation, and staff from the 3 agencies continued to coordinate over the last several months to try to come up with a comprehensive final design scope of work and to develop a delineation of costs that each agency would be anticipated to assume. That's the basic project history. I'll hand it back to Tim. He's going to go over what some recent outreach updates have concluded.
I have a question first. Madam President, can you remind me, what is the CCDC funding program for this current fiscal year or the one that's about to start in 2 weeks?
Madam Mayor, Madam President, Commissioners, and Council members, it is available in fiscal 22. I believe in the recently adopted CIP at CCDC, we have rolled some over. It is available in 23.
So it's available as soon as you're ready. Great, thanks.
And as Zach said, quickly, just a few updates. We have continued meeting with all those that have a stake in this, including the state of Idaho, and I myself have been able to participate that involve the state ITD and the state Department of Administration and the administration itself. And in no case have we heard of any specific concerns about the 5th and 6th Street conversion. So we've kept that dialogue right up until the last couple weeks, continuing to talk to the state as to any concerns they might have, and have heard none. In addition, the Downtown Boise Association and the Mayor's Office, Economic Development Office, has continued their discussion with the businesses. Businesses are very excited about this, have made suggestions for other changes that could also be beneficial, such as better pedestrian crossings at Front and Myrtle and things like this. They have lots of ideas about how to even further improve the pedestrian experience, but a lot of excitement among the businesses that's come from that outreach. Then, as we mentioned, the success you had with the other two-way conversions, and this being just the next one to do, I will mention the success of private development as well along 5th and 6th Streets, all that's happening in that central addition area of the city, and new people living there, the potential for new businesses. There are new businesses. occupying some of these buildings, and the benefit that will accrue from this conversion is just expanding as more people come here. And then, of course, that CCDC has committed to increasing their funding towards the conversion. You all know, and Zach probably mentioned, but they have to operate within the urban renewal district boundary, of course. That's where this relationship comes from, because it terminates at State Street, I guess, Jefferson. So there's a relationship there because some of it's outside their district, but CCDC has committed to increasing their funding from where it was before to help make this happen. So that is it for me, and Zach's gonna take us through the project itself.
Madam Chair, the key thing just for us to take note of, I'm sure Zach will hit it on this slide, but you've noticed the last thing that last slide said was that the district sunsets in 25.
Correct, yeah.
So we've got funding program for 23, 24, and if it's not used by 25, then we've lost that window of using this funding as a way to fill the gap.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, essentially our schedule's laid out here. We're hoping to enter into an interagency cost share agreement with ACHD this fall, so that we can dive into final design. We anticipate it will take upwards of 9 to 12 months to complete that in 2023 and then move into construction, hopefully in 24. So before I get into the details of the our cost share proposal, we do want to acknowledge the Commission's foresight and thank them for adding the project or reprogramming the project back into the integrated 5-year work plan. In that latest edition, which was adopted in January of 22, the ACHD identified the project with a budget of about $3.3 million, anticipating design in 2023 and then construction starting in 24. So, as I mentioned earlier, the Commission adopted the partial two-way conversion back in September of 2017, which included the full two-way conversion of 6th Street from Myrtle to Fort, and a partial conversion of 5th Street from Myrtle to Washington, as shown here in red. The adopted concept does not include any improvements for the northern 2 blocks of 5th Street, nor the 5-leg intersection of 5th, Fort, and Hayes, shown in blue. As mentioned earlier, following that official concept adoption, the city and ACHD were coordinating on some sub-alternatives of that partial conversion that looked to minimize or at least improve the amount of on-street parking that was impacted. So our proposal is to basically pick up from that point forward, carry on with final design, and move into construction to get this project across the finish line. So to complete the project, that will require a cost share agreement between CCDC and ACHD. Our proposed cost share will generally cover final design and construction, with the 2 main components listed here, which is the two-way conversion itself, which is largely a signal hardware, ped ramp reconstruction, signage, and pavement marking exercise. And then the second part is pavement maintenance and associated stormwater aspect, which was recently coordinated with us through ACHD staff. CCDC has agreed to lead the project administration, which will entail managing consultant design, bidding, and administration of the construction of the project. Cost share proposal will generally allocate costs as bulleted towards the top of this slide. So CCDC will address the two-way conversion costs for the areas within the URD, which are highlighted yellow on that image, south of Jefferson. The River Myrtle URD boundary only extends to Jefferson. As Tim mentioned, we cannot expend funds outside the URD. So we anticipate ACHD would fund the two-way conversion improvements north of Jefferson, shown in green. This is roughly a 70-30 split inside and outside the URD. We anticipate, similar to various other cost share agreements we have currently with ACHD, that ACHD would fund the full cost of the pavement reconstruction associated stormwater components of the project on both corridors. A proposed scope of services with the consultant fees as well as the anticipated construction costs was provided to ACHD staff earlier in the summer for review, and request that that be the basis for a future cost share agreement. Outlined in that scope were the consultant tasks for final design, as well as the anticipated CCDC and ACHD cost breakdown, which are summarized in the table on the bottom of the screen. As can be seen, the total anticipated cost for ACHD is about $4.1 million, which is about $770,000 more than the programmed 5-year work plan cost that was presented on a few slides earlier. I want to acknowledge that over 60% of that cost is tied to that pavement rehabilitation or reconstruction cost. With that, we will open it up for discussion, but our hope today is that the commission will direct staff to review the information submitted earlier in the summer and assist with preparing an interagency cost share agreement with CCDC that addresses design in fiscal year 2023 and then construction starting in 2024. With that, we'll stand for any questions.
All right, thank you, Zach. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Yes, Madam President, I'd like to thank the city of Boise for bringing this back up. I've been here for the whole time that the 5th and 6th conversion has been on the table and discussed, and without going into too much detail right now, I know that the decisions that we made that didn't even involve turning over any soil or laying a square foot of asphalt resulted in about $150 million worth of economic development to the city of Boise and the downtown. And for that, I've been very grateful. And I would expect that that kind of a return on this kind of investment would continue and ought to be the goal of both of our agencies. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Pickering?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm just, could staff give me some more background? So I know, we talked about this earlier this year, and I'm just kind of confused as to why, was it just because of staff capacity, but how come that we took so long to have this conversation? Because it seemed like it was really unanimous from our standpoint that we would support this moving forward, and this is a no-brainer from my perspective too, and I just know that we're heading up on a deadline. So I'm just curious for like future discussions as to, was there a breakdown in communication or a process problem? Just because I think this project is so important, I'm sure there's more that are just as important moving forward.
I think that's a great question. I think it's one really for ACHD staff to address.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Thank you, Madam President. Well, thanks for the presentation. It's good to hear that it sounds like there's good agreement from all of you to move forward with this. We're certainly excited about it. One of the questions I have, as these other conversions have moved forward, some of the detailed design decisions end up having quite a significant impact. For instance, are we going to have silva cells and green stormwater? This signal timing, is it going to be optimized for north movement or south movement, which time of day? An example of that one is 13th Street, which seems to be optimized for movement north in the morning, and rather than south, getting to the connector from the neighborhood. And so really understanding some of those things and how it impacts the use and the congestion and the access to it. And will there be an opportunity for decision makers to understand what decisions you're making along the way on those things?
President, Madam Mayor, Council Member, yeah, absolutely. Commission and Council will be kept apprised of design developments as they occur. Some of those details have not been worked out. There will be, as I mentioned, a stormwater component. CCDC is not anticipating a streetscape component at this time. Our budget simply doesn't have that bandwidth at this point, but that's a discussion we could probably have internally, and if there's a desired location for such items as silva cells within streetscape, certainly we can talk about that as an opportunity.
Any place that's going to get torn up, we ought to do that.
I agree, totally.
Please.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank everyone for taking this up again. I don't know what everybody else's experience has been over the last few years, or if it's even reflected in our police department figures, but I know for myself personally, I have had a few close calls on the road when we're dealing with one-ways, and I don't know if it's that we've had an influx of new community members who are not used to the one-way grid, and so I rarely use my horn. I've had to for my own safety, and so I think it's timely, because again, we do have an influx of people into the community who are perhaps not used to our one-way system, and so I just want to express my appreciation for us moving forward on this.
Thank you. Commissioner McKinney?
Just a question as a practical matter about the two-way conversion, is this going to involve changes to the cross-section of the roadway as far as, curb and gutter locations and so on? Or is it simply, going to two-way from one way? What's the extent of the changes?
For the most part. Madam President, Madam Mayor, Commissioner, we're anticipating completing the work within the existing curb with the caveat that certain stormwater improvements, even associated with the concrete or asphalt repaving, may necessitate seepage beds or other facilities underground that could impact existing curb and gutter, but the intent is to fit it within the existing cross-section as much as possible.
All right, good, thank you.
Yeah, I think you should.
Yeah, I just want to appreciate that we're moving on this. It's unfortunate that because of the way it was classified under a previous commission, under this funding system, that we weren't following. We knew we weren't following. So I was glad this is moving forward. The other, of course, you didn't mention, of course, is the state has now moved most of its facilities up onto Chinden, and so it's not, the opportunity for economic development is along that corridor is even more significant. And I'm hopeful that because the conversions on the other streets have involved improvements, as Councilmember Clegg said, with Silva cells, and those have usually been in curb extensions. I'm hoping that we're going to see more curb extensions along this, because I think that's so critical. I really hope that you continue to push really hard for curb extensions at the intersections to make pedestrians more visible, and that should be the default, and that the absence of a curb extension should be the exception. And so the more of those curb extensions that are built, the more people understand how that operates. So I'm hopeful, and I want to see some nods that basically virtually every intersection along that corridor is going to have curb extensions as the picture right up there right today, that indicates curb extension. That needs to be on that corridor.
Madam President, Madam Mayor, Commissioner, that's actually an analysis that Kittleson, our consultant, went through with ACHD and CCDC leading up to this point, was identifying that's a major cost, right, is converting standard ped ramps to bulb outs, but that was analyzed, and we actually coordinated closely with Cody and the district engineer here on an assessment of evaluation to determine which curbs could be converted to a bulb out, and a significant portion of them can be. There are some rules that prevent certain locations. There has to be on-street parking, for instance, but we are looking at that, as you mentioned, kind of as a default.
The only thing I'd add, Commissioner, to that is that there's been great effort in the design, and especially in the interaction we've had with the businesses, to save the curb extensions where we have them in the redesign. So, to your point, let's move further with that, but we started with, we can't lose any in this process, and that was the potential when it started.
Commissioner Pickering.
So building off of that point, what conversations have there been around ITD with 5th and 6th Street on, is that front Myrtle?
Front Myrtle.
Because we know that there's so many crashes and near misses from a pedestrian standpoint. Are there any conversations with them? Are they going to be part of this process in terms of improving those intersections?
President, Madam Mayor, Commission, I did not attend any of those conversations, but as far as the scope of the project, I don't anticipate significant changes to either of those intersections with this project. City of Boise staff may have more details about specific discussion items that occurred recently with ITD, but I'm not aware of anything.
And follow that, we really didn't talk about additional improvements at Front or Myrtle with ITD. It was really about the conversion and the design we proposed for 5th and 6th, but that's certainly a next step.
I'm sorry, Mayor McLean.
Sure, I'll jump in on those two things. The commissioner's earlier question, because Tim wasn't prepared to answer that, and I could give a better explanation as to why this issue is here now. But on the priority is the conversion, and recognizing that we need to make progress to support our businesses, to provide for more up and down traffic. And then, ITD has signaled an interest in discussing the corridor as a whole along Front Myrtle, but I wouldn't want this to be waylaid because of what needs to be a longer, deeper conversation because of the impacts, and needs along the whole corridor, when ITD is ready, and interested in having that conversation. So this is something that just, because we plan for it, because of the window of funding, that's important that we move ahead with. And on why this now, an interagency agreement, I believe the best forum for that for both CCDC, the city, and this agency is to discuss it when we're all together, and we don't get together very often. And so this is the opportunity for all of us to be here, to talk about what we need to do next, for the commission then to be able to make that final direction to staff. But I wouldn't point fingers at any agency. It is that I believed it was really important that we see this together, and it wasn't necessarily ready for the last time that we met, which was it April? So,
This spring, yeah, absolutely. Commissioner Hanson?
Madam President, I would just point to the fact that ITD actually was pretty helpful. I think you can confirm on the 11th Street, and that actually involved, I think, more significant alterations to the way the 11th Street crossing, the 11th Street Bikeway crossing Front Myrtle is to the flow of traffic on Front Myrtle. So I'm thinking that ITD ought to be able to move on this fairly quickly without the kind of reluctance that we had earlier when we didn't have an 11th Street experience. And I think 11th Street is really demonstrating that it works under the current engineer, that they're very open to do that. So,
Mayor?
I'm encouraged.
Yeah, and I just want to say for the record, ITD has been very helpful in all the different elements of the work that we at the city have tried to do collaboratively with the agency, and with BRT in particular, and in the conversation, and on transit, Amtrak. So there's no reason to think that will be an issue. It's just timing wise, focusing on the conversion right now, and then collaborating as we've shown we can on a discussion about the connector. Will be something that's next. And great call on 11th Street. That pedestrian crossing right there is just marvelous. And then working with CCDC and ACHD on the whole bike corridor along 11th Street. I mean, it's a great example of how we're all able to work together to move that along.
Good things happen when you work together. Absolutely.
Madam President, just a real quick comment to the 11th Street Bikeway. I just want to say thank you everyone who worked on that. I use it daily now. It's wonderful, and we need more of those. I'm really excited by this conversation because it does now open up the possibility of what's next. Front Myrtle is one of the what next. The other is what is next at the intersection of Fort and 5th and Hayes. That corridor is now becoming a roundabout corridor. I don't know if that fits there, but we do need to figure out what's next there. One other what next that I would just put on the table, just nothing tomorrow or immediate, but as we do these conversions, and I think Director Keene was really eloquent about how important it is to have the route choices and the different direction as you're navigating a city, both by car and by foot and bike. And we still have a fair distance in the middle of the city, 9th, 8th, Capitol, where things are pretty messed up. And there might be some opportunities there. For instance, converting one of the legs in front of the Capitol building back to two-way that we should be thinking about. So to me, this conversation just opens the door to even more and more make our downtown, which is great already, even better. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And and thank you very much for this update. Since we haven't met since the spring, I think it was, April or May, I think you're right, Mayor McLean, on that. I would like our staff, since we're just seeing this, to connect with you, perhaps after the meeting today. You can all talk and figure something out, and we can get this on our agenda, because we are aware of the time is of the essence to move forward. So I think that's our immediate next step. So, all right. Any further questions or comments? No? All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate it. All right. Next is a digital access study.
Yes, it is. I'd like to do a sound check real quick. Can you guys hear me? This is Alex Winkler.
Yes, we sure can. We can't see you, but we can hear you. Welcome.
All right, thank you.
There you
all
are.
right. Hi. Thank you so much. And here, let me go ahead and share my screen. Do you guys see broadband opportunities being broadcast yet?
Nope.
For the slides?
Not yet.
Okay, let me try share screen again. All right. Outstanding. Okie doke. So my name is Alexandra Winkler. I am the Chief Information Officer for the City of Boise, and I do have a partner here that I brought along. This is Steve O'Mara, the Chief Information Officer of Ada County. So thank you for having us both here today to talk broadband opportunities and digital access studies. So we're calling to you guys today from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, interestingly enough. We're at a CIO conference that happens every year where 40 CIOs from around the country, from both cities and counties, get together and talk about and learn about and really share all of the hot things that are happening in tech across the country. And guess what this week was all about? This topic. We just hosted a session this morning, a broadband panel, where we talked about the changing role of the CIO in this space across the country, and how we have the opportunities now to start talking big, to start talking about things that extend beyond the boundaries of our internal service or internal city needs, and look about solving huge problems that we have for internet connectivity around our cities and counties. So that's what we wanted to talk to you guys about today. So real quick, today we're going to talk about broadband goals. Recent preliminary data from a digital access study that we have commissioned, joint commissioned from the county and the city side. What we'll be doing as local municipalities within Ada County to start trying to move the needle to improve internet connectivity for our county and city. And how we would love to partner with ACHD to help move the needle on this problem. So those are the few things we're going to talk about. Any questions before we launch in?
Nope. You're good to go.
Thank you. Okay. Let's see. And I'm trying to progress my slides. Perfect. So to create opportunity for everyone within the city and county, we must ensure that everyone who lives, works, and plays in Ada County and the city have equitable access to reliable and affordable high-speed internet. Today, we simply do not have this. We've set some broadband goals where we think min viable is 100 megabits per second download and upload. Problem being, we can't get those upload speeds with copper and DSL in our system. We think fiber first is the way to go for the future of our county, to allow the tech industry to come in for economic development, for accessibility of services like health, education, etc. It's just not good enough to be where we are today. Eventually, we want to get to the point where we're a gig city, which translated is 1,000 megabits per second download and upload speed. But at the very least, those that live within the boundaries of Ada County should have 100 down and upload. We need to make it affordable. We need to make it last, future-proof it, and become smart city and county able. And the other thing we know is that this isn't a problem that stops and starts along regional boundaries, along city boundaries, or even county boundaries. The only way to solve this problem is, in fact, by no kidding, having partnerships between our organizations within the cities, from the cities to the counties and between the counties. So that's how we need to start thinking about this problem. And it's really why we showed up and forced Steve and I together as a city and a county. This is a regional problem, not a city one. So today in our county, we're basically we have the situation where we have 1.5 providers in large part, okay? 60% of the market share in terms of public providers, 60% of our market uses Sparklight. About 34% uses CenturyLink or Lumen. It really doesn't matter which one you call them. They use both names. And then we know that TDS, you guys are very familiar with TDS because they're just coming into our market today, have at this point about 0.7 of the market share within our county. This while we do have it, is not a competitive landscape. And it does not lead us to the point where we will have the economic viability that we need in this region. We need other fiber providers to come into our market so that we have more modern infrastructure and so that we have more affordable offerings. So this is one of the things we want to talk about. How do we affect that without doing it ourselves? Because our intention is not to offer services to the homes, but it is to increase competitive and increase the competition in our space, and then in turn drive down prices and improve the availability. We were recently talking with a colleague of ours, Steve and I, who just moved here from Mountain Home. He moved to Boise proper, and he now pays, what did he say, like $20 to $30 more per month for less service than he got in Mountain Home. That's simply not acceptable. We need to work on that. So right now we just updated our Ookla speed test data. We subscribe to this. We see here in the left-hand chart that as of September 14th data, what's blue is those that are above 100 megabits per second doing the download test. Now, what do you need in order to do a download test? You need to have a connection, you need to have a device, and you need to be savvy enough to do the speed test. So we know that this isn't representing everybody who's out there, because the ones not doing the speed test don't have service. So this only gives you a certain amount of information. It is download speeds that you care about when you're watching Netflix or when you're accessing, documents you need at home. So if you look on the left, that's what we get across the board right now in our county. If you look on the right, that's the second provider. In the blue, that's those above 100 megabits per second. So that shows you that the provider that is 34% of our market share, if you just look at that alone, what we have in terms of comparing ourselves to our targets. This is even a bleaker picture. At this point, only those in blue are those who get 100 megabits per second. This is really demonstrative of how not widespread fiber services are across our domain. So this is what you need in order to do things like Teams meetings at home, or being able to upload documents very well, et cetera. So most of the blues, in fact, we know to be businesses. We have preliminary results from the the digital access study that we have been doing this summer. And we wanted to share this with you first. We literally just did this analysis yesterday, and we'll know more later when we get the study delivered to us. But we just found out yesterday that approximately 11% of Ada County residents lack internet access at home. That's approximately 18,000 to 20,000 households in Ada County alone. So when people say Ada County is served, well, yes, we are very well served compared to other places, but it's simply not acceptable to have 20,000 households without access. So unfortunately as well, we know that those that have lower incomes are the ones largely that lack the access. 61% of households with incomes less than $25,000 a year lack that access. It's not just those that lack access that we're worried about as well. It's those that have it, but it's inadequate. For those that are not at all satisfied to moderately satisfied, we did a customer sat kind of aspect to this survey. We found that 36% are only not at all satisfied to moderately satisfied with reliability, 48% with speed, and 64% with affordability or cost. So that's the landscape that we have going on right now. So what are we doing about it? That's what's most interesting and exciting about this. We're growing a countywide municipal broadband group. We started meeting in January. We met in January and June. And as soon as we have results to this study, we're going to meet again. And who's involved in this group? Well, it's ACHD. Thank you, Christy Little. She's a member of our group. County, all the cities, all 6 cities within our county. We had representatives there. We have both school districts, West Ada and Boise School District, as well as the university. We just had conversations with St. Luke's, so we're starting to reach out to hospitals as anchor institutions. And then libraries as well are included within this. So these are the people getting together to talk about these issues. Like we said, we're doing a digital access study. This is focused in on the resident experience as well as small business experience. So we did a phone survey for the residents and a email survey for the small businesses, and we're awaiting those results. Another thing that we don't talk about very often, but is super essential ingredient to this, is that we actually have existing proofs of concept of how we could, as municipalities, work together with ACHD to put conduit below our roads, as well as fiber that could be leveraged in an open access network kind of way for those that don't have to potentially put fiber all the way into data centers. So we're experimenting or prototyping a conduit fiber proof of concept care of CCDC's improvements. That's where we've laid the conduit already. So thank you, CCDC. In addition to that, today we are designing, and this is like breaking news, we're designing a new fiber and conduit municipal open access network. Currently, we're calling it Greater Treasure Valley Network. It's just in the design phase, but we really believe that if we lay conduit and fiber under the roads, in arterial roads around our county, that we can create access points for new ISPs to come into our market, to go fiber to the to the premises, to places that are not well served today. In addition, it could solve many problems that we have today with government access to service, shared government use cases like 911, Next Gen 911, and help the anchor facilities or anchor institutions along the way. So right now we don't have a big bucket of capital for that, but we're seeking funding and in fact about ready to submit next week a middle mile grant application to represent and try to fund the start of this new open access network. And as well, we've been working with and talking to new potential fiber-based providers to come into our county as well. We're talking with your ACHD staff about different deployment options that we might be able to employ to make this faster and cheaper. So last slide. The question is, how might we, and by we, county, city, private providers, as well as ACHD, how might we come together to incentivize, make it easy and affordable for fiber providers to come in and build out and modernize our internet infrastructure? When we are limited in our speeds with cable and DSL technology, we need to upgrade that to fiber. We need to consider new deployment methods that are proving that they're working in other places right now, potentially like micro trenching. So explore those. Streamline permitting and construction processes. We know that you're working hard to do so. We would love to be participants in that process, as well as evolving the standards, ordinances, policies, et cetera, playbooks to allow for these kinds of things. We want to create a non-discriminatory fiber network so that we can actually help move the needle on getting fiber to the home for those that are today are and underserved. Like we talked about, we have those 18,000 households that don't have it today, estimated. We also want to lay the way for our future. How might we become a smart city and county into the future? How do we help out the government and anchor institutions needs and the intergovernment connectivity needs that we have? And then developing the smart policies that support all that. So that's the end of the deck. We wanted to save time for questions. We know that this is a new conversation between our organizations, but one that's super exciting and has so many possibilities for partnerships. So with that, I stand for questions.
Thank you, Alex. A lot of good information there. I'm a little distressed by all the yellow I saw on that map, especially where I live. That explains a lot.
We are too.
Yeah. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Up by where I live, there's no color whatsoever. I get 5 megabits per second download and 3 upload where I live. That's the best I can do for $65 a month. And so I'm really grateful for my ACHD iPad with the Verizon card, yes. Anyway, the only thing I wrestle with this particular discussion is the proper role of government in the commercial business. And that is, I know what the need is. I have absolutely no idea why more ISPs really don't care to service this area. I scratched my head over that, personally, I'm just not sure that we should be providing the private sector with the opportunity to profit at the net cost to the taxpayer. Again, but I have my eyes wide open, ears wide open. I'm really interested in hearing and seeing the concepts and discussions go forward.
All right, thank you very much. Commissioner Pickering.
Thanks, Madam President. I'm just curious, are we waiting for, the group that's been meeting with Christie to kind of hear the next steps about how ACHD can be a good partner? I guess I'm just kind of curious as to what are those next steps and how can we be a good partner in this work?
And I think it's just been recently that the meetings have been taking place. Mr. Price, if you could give us an update.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Madam President, Council, men and women, and commissioners. Steve Price, General Counsel. I've met with Alex and her team, as well as members of our staff, with the particular mid-mile grant that's coming up. We'll be presenting to the commission next week a letter of support. Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the deadline is the 30th.
Yeah, we're trying to upload it by the 27th in case there's any glitches, but yeah, yours might be the last thing that we put into the grant application before we click submit. So yes, that would be amazing, please, if you could provide.
The other thing that we've been struggling with the whole broadband business and the small cell issues. We have a long history with a lot of the providers. The commission knows we've done master license agreements. We're required by federal law to let those providers into the public right-of-way, just in terms of infrastructure. We considered 2 years ago, I think, Madam President, an ordinance that would address the issues of small cell within outside the downtown core, and the commission didn't give enough votes to adopt that ordinance. We're working on a new ordinance right now that's more comprehensive as to broadband in total, that'll address all the issues. With that, the focus is mainly on infrastructure in the right-of-way, how it happens. We have a dig once policy part of that. So we'll be coming to the commission. I provided Alex and her team the opportunity to provide comment on the draft ordinance once we get it. And we'll continue to be having discussions with Alex and her team and the other partners within Ada County on the proposal. So we look forward to that. We are behind the curve on this. Broadband's coming faster than we can research it, if you will, and hopefully we'll have a comprehensive ordinance for this and working with the city.
Going forward. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. So a bit to Commissioner Goldthorpe's point.
Thank you, Mr. Price.
Alex, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or expound on this, but as I understand it, we're not trying to get in the business of providing fiber. We're trying to get in the business of providing access to it, much like the city of Ammon did. I think Ammon certainly wouldn't be considered anything but a very conservative city, and they found what I think was a really good middle ground approach to providing access to the private sector to be able to compete, so that competition then benefited their residents. And as I understand this project, that's what we're after.
We, Madam Mayor, yeah, this is Alex again. That's correct. Oh yeah, thank you. So we are not looking to compete with the private industry here. We're looking at how we can enable them to come in and solve our internet problems. So we see ourselves as more of an enabler We see ourselves as a convener as well. We're convening these different groups together to start removing barriers for private industry to come in and well serve our community. And so that's really what we see as being the role. Agreed. Mountain Home even is employing the Ammon model. We're not even necessarily talking about providing infrastructure all the way to the home within all those residential streets. But what we want to do is enable new ISPs to come in to be able to do that. That's why we think a middle mile network will help to facilitate that without getting in the business of providing service ourselves. So very good question.
Thank you, Alex. Councilmember Halliburton.
Madam President, thank you. Alex, I've got a comment. Feel free to jump in if you need to, or if you feel appropriate. This is such a great opportunity right now, and we do have an opportunity to make sure that our transportation system is linked to a lot of this. I think a lot of lower income people, they do have smartphones. Smartphones are cheap. Smartphone plans are not cheap. And so a lot of people are using smartphones only when they're hooked up to internet. And this is how they're accessing their transportation system most of the time. And as we look at things like BRT, maps for getting around town, how to navigate your city, it's really, really important that people who do have this computer in their pocket have the ability to use it to help them navigate the city and help them use public transportation. So as we're looking at these investments, I just think it's so important that we see the link to transportation physically on our streets, at our bus stops, in these different areas that really make it possible for people to access the different systems that we have to offer.
Observation. Thank you very much for sharing.
President.
Commissioner Hanson.
Yeah, and a little context, I think the concern I have about moving on 2 tracks is that, and perhaps that's one of the reasons why there's not been as much interest in investing in this area, is because we have this unique situation where the right-of-way is run by one government, and yet the general purpose government regulating impacting industry is a separate government. And I don't like the notion that you have to go through 2 bureaucracies or 2 systems in order to operate that. I think this is an appropriate thing. We don't do telecommunications. Things that happen in the right-of-way that don't relate to transportation should be managed by the general purpose government through a joint powers agreement, and whatever fees are collected go to that joint powers agreement. And then we have certain criteria like dig once and don't interfere with the sidewalks and ADA accessibility. There's certain things that a city is perfectly capable of managing, but we don't have to do all that licensing thing and collect a fee for this, and then the provider has to go to the city and do a separate licensing, and then who's doing the enforcement? Well, we have no enforcement authority in our own right-of-way, so they have to do the enforcement. So it's complicated, and I think we should simplify it, because they're not expecting coming into this market to say, oh, we have to deal with these bureaucracies. I think we have to think through this differently, and you're not going to be getting this in your conference on the national level. You're going to say, wow, this is a weird thing where the city doesn't own and control its own right-of-way. So we should do this through a joint powers agreement, and then recognize that the city can protect the transportation priorities that the transportation agency wants preserved, and that the rest is managed as a unity through the general purpose government. And that's the direction I'd like to see. I do not want us to see a huge ordinance with the new licensing requirements in addition to all the regulatory authority that's vested in the city. So that's one of the reasons why I was very resistant to seeing us develop that several years ago when we were approached. I know the temptation's there because, of course, it's in the right-of-way, and we can collect all kind of fees from these private businesses. But I think that's not a good direction to go. We're going to have ACHD does not regulate telecommunications, so we shouldn't be in that business.
Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. Alex, thank you for that presentation. I'm wondering, have you connected at all with the Idaho Broadband Advisory Board and their strategic plan, and how does this fit into that plan?
Good question, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Sanchez. Yes, we have. In fact, we have a letter of support from the broadband office at the state for our middle mile grant application. So we have been absolutely coordinating with the state. They support this open access network idea. Furthermore, it's in alignment with the state broadband strategic plan, because their biggest emphasis is how do we serve the unserved? Okay, that is their biggest thing. Yes, they talk a little bit about rural, but above all, the state goals is to serve the unserved. We just found out with the data that we presented today that we have about 20,000 households impacted in our county that we need to figure out how we serve that. So that's how we support that. And we have been in coordination with them and attend their advisory meetings.
Thank you, Alex. Just
Thank
a
you.
quick anecdote that I'd like to share, Madam President. I appreciate Councilmember Halliburton bringing up, the fact that we have folks who are living on the margins and, what the reality of their lives is and how using this technology helps them to be a part of the greater world. But I also think we need to talk about what we've often heard described as the missing middle. People who are perhaps a little better situated, but that also are relying on these services. I count myself among them. I recently started my own LLC, and I used my internet to be able to do my business. And in order for me to do my business, I'm gonna have to start looking at using that internet to curry business out of our state, because we don't have high wages here. And I'm not a spring chicken, I'm 51. I gotta, what do they say? I gotta bring it in while it's hot. And so, during my work, my internet dropped twice, and my heart about stopped. I thought, my goodness, this is how I'm gonna try to support myself as being an entrepreneur in our state. And so I think we have to think about those folks too, who are doing their darndest to try to, as we say, live the American dream, but we can only do so much. And I thought to myself, well, do I need to go buy a better computer? I had my client actually use their IT department to try to figure out how I could maximize my internet reliability. Even with all that, twice I dropped during my talk. And so just having that personal experience of the anxiety that it causes as you're trying to support yourself.
Sure.
And this is the highway that we're relying on these days, the internet. And I think we've come to that point, especially now that we've learned through the last few years, we've got less people traveling to their workplace, and their home is their workplace. And this is the way they get to work. This is the way they do their work. And I think we would be negligent if we didn't do everything that we could as community leaders, as elected officials, to do what we can to make sure that they have the support that they need to take care of themselves, to be able to bring in more money into not just to our city, our county, but our state and this part of the country. And so I am really grateful, Alex, for the work that you're doing and helping us to highlight the needs of our community and how we can better serve them.
Thank you very much. So Alex, on that, we're going to go ahead and end it there, and we look forward to the continued discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very informative. All right. Our next item and our last item on here, and we're on a tight schedule, is the 8th Street Bikeway update. Mr. Laws.
Thank you, Madam President. Madam Mayor, members of the Commission and Council. I know we're a little behind schedule, so I'll try to breeze through this to save time for
Good
open
discussion, but yeah, let's get back on track.
So for the record, my name is Tom Laws, Planning and Programming Manager here with Ada County Highway District, and I'm just going to provide a quick update on our 8th Street Bikeway concept study. So the project objective, as a reminder, is to provide a consistent, low-stress bike connection between the Boise North End, downtown Boise, and the Boise River Greenbelt. And although I'm up here today, I really want to call out the core team, Karen Gallagher with the City of Boise, Zach Pietmeyer with CCDC, Brooke Green with ACHD, and then also Kittleson Associates, our consultant, who's really helped move this process along over the last year. Specifically, when we're talking about 8th Street in this project, for context, we're looking between State Street all the way up to Union, which is where the Boise Co-op is. And this project is actually divided into 2 different segments. In red, you'll see the section that's really being led by CCDC from State to Washington, Washington to Franklin. And then that's where the current urban renewal district boundary ends, and moving north beyond that from Franklin up to Union is ACHD's jurisdiction and project. In addition to that, we are actively working on a concept study for the Franklin Street Bikeway, and that's highlighted here in yellow. So that's what we're actively working on, but I wanted to take a step back and really walk through some of the major investments that have occurred on this corridor over the past few years. So just starting to the very south with the Boise River Greenbelt. In 2018, CCDC and the city of Boise focused on an accessibility project along the Trestle Bridge, which pulled out all of those railroad ties. If you remember, it was a very bumpy ride, difficult to get a wheelchair across, a bicycle and so forth, and added a ADA compliant flat concrete pad instead, additional lighting and other safety enhancements as well. Moving up north closer to River Street and the Boise Main Library, back in 2012, enhanced crossings were added, both bicycle activated push buttons as well as pedestrians to really make that crossing safer as residents went down to the Greenbelt, but then also north into the north end and downtown. 2005 was actually one of the very first improvements on this corridor, and that was actually development-led with the construction of Bodo and the creation of a green south contrafill bike lane headed towards the Greenbelt. Moving further along north, in 2016, there was an intensive investment in the Boise Center and really the core part of downtown that, although not directly related to the Bikeway, included dozens of bike parking with really the intent to attract people to that core for a variety of different events. 2014, that contraflow bike lane was further extended between Main and Bannock. And most recently, CCDC completed a project in 2021 that extended that contraflow southbound bike lane from Bannock all the way up to State Street. So focusing in on this effort and really what's occurred over the last calendar year, between January and March, we kicked off this effort with an initial public survey and public involvement period, and then and really kicked off that both with the commission and the city council. Zach, Karen, and myself presented at that time. Between March and really today, we've been evaluating alternatives. That included several check-ins with the commission as well as one with the city council back in March. And really our intent is to continue with those alternative evaluations with the goal in early winter to conclude with a public hearing and ideally have some concrete next steps moving forward. Taking a step back though, really what we've heard across this last year from our partners, from the public, from adjacent property owners is there's a strong desire for safe bicycle and pedestrian routes. And primarily it's that connection from the foothills all the way down to the Greenbelt. There is really concern and a desire to maintain that existing tree canopy along 8th Street, to really minimize those conflicts between all users, between your micromobility, your scooters, your bikes, your pedestrians, your vehicles. Concerns about the parking loss and what that could potentially do to the surrounding neighborhoods, and then specifically drop off in loading zone preservation along the corridor. So initially, through that public involvement, we came up with an initial recommendation, which I'll call Concept A. And with this recommendation, it included a 6.5-foot southbound protected bike lane, that contrafill lane that currently exists further south on this corridor, a single vehicle travel lane, and 1 lane of parking northbound on 8th Street, and then followed by another raised protected northbound bicycle lane. This we found that was the most comfortable across all the concepts we considered for bicyclists and pedestrians. It maintained the most amount of trees along the corridor. However, there were some cons. So for example, it took the most amount of parking from the corridor. And in terms of cost, it was right between a couple of the other alternatives that we examined. And if you ask what are those other alternatives, with that initial study, we had 3, concept A, B, and C. A, as I've highlighted, with B, it looked at a similar treatment, but moving that northbound bike lane to be on street, and that would allow for keeping parking on both sides. And then concept C, which looked at really mirroring what the 2021 CCDC project had with angled in parking. You can visualize it kind of right by the State House there. In addition to that, over the last few months, we've looked at multi-use pathways, we've looked at cycle tracks, and then really trying to target improvements to limit those impacts on those mixing zones, those drop-off and loading zones as well. And for next steps, our technical team is continuing to evaluate those alternatives plus a few others. And those others include looking at 9th Street as a couplet from really Union Street and the co-op down to where our Franklin Bikeway exists. It's looking at modifying that initial recommendation with Concept A for larger buffer spaces, more targeted improvements along those drop-off and pickup spaces. And then also a potential to decouple this project from the effort that CCDC is working on. So allowing that section south of Franklin to occur in one phase, and then that section north Franklin to Union to occur in another. And all throughout this process, we plan for continued public and partner outreach. So I know that was a lot very quickly, but I'm happy to stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions or comments for Tom? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, open discussion. We did it, Mayor McLean.
We did it.
Madam President?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Councilmember.
No, you didn't call me,
Yeah.
sorry.
This is related to the last discussion. There is a little bit more history there that I would just add. This has been a discussion that's been going on for almost 10 years. I was on the Mayor's Bicycle Advisory Committee before I was elected, and we looked at this first section, the Franklin, and it was something that the entire group looked at and said, this is the actual natural path that people are going down. If you ever go into a park and you see like there's this weird dirt track that goes through the middle of the park, and you're wondering why did they go there instead of the sidewalk? It's because people are naturally going that direction. And that really was identified as here's where people are always riding the wrong way on a one-way street, because it is the natural path to go. When we were having that conversation, the dream was to always extend it further up the road, and we just didn't think that it would ever be possible to do because it was outside of that CCDC area. And so when this came forward earlier this year, maybe it was a year and a half ago, it was amazing to see that this was actually a possibility to sort of complete that dream and complete that connection all the way up. And so this really has been something that has been almost a decade in the making as far as the consideration goes, because it was observed that this is sort of the natural area that people want to go down. So I just thought I would add that extra context to there. And also on top of that, I know that there's some concerns about potentially people getting hit by a bicycle. I would love the idea that there's going to be so many thousands of people on this bike path that you'd have to dodge bikes to jump to the other side. It's just not the reality, of how any bike path, even the Greenbelt works. It's one of our busiest stretches there, and there's still lots of opportunities to walk around and do some things. And so there's sort of this concept, this idea of how crazy it's going to be. Again, like the Greenbelt on its busiest, craziest day is never difficult to wait more than 1 second and walk to the other side of the Greenbelt. And so I understand that concern. I'm not sure that it's the reality of what you would see on that route. So just a little extra context to that
We
discussion.
appreciate it. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments?
Madam President, really quickly, thank you, Councilmember Halliburton, for that context. And I will say I had to wait at a bike lane behind 4 other bikes the other day, and it was really disconcerting, but really cool. I was like, wow, this is working. So thank you, everyone who's been working on that. It was quite nice. I hope that, as we go forward with these meetings, maybe have them a little more frequently if that's possible. We still haven't talked about master streets map, which I think now that we're in our zoning code, that will be one of the outcomes of that we'll want to integrate. And thank you for the support on the State Street project. Look forward to working on that. I suspect we'll get some updates on that. I've been talking to Commissioner Pickering. As you may know, we have a initiative called the City of Trees Challenge to plant a tree for every household in the city. 85,000 of those are going to have to go on private land, but 15,000 of them need to go on public land. And in fact, the more we can get on public land, the better off we're going to be. So maybe a potential thing to look at in the future is to review both of our tree policies and the plantings in the public right-of-ways and see if we can align them and make it easier to plant trees.
Good idea.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Alexis.
I just want to say thanks to the City of Boise and the Mayor for being a great partner with us and just really being a great leader in this space. and the trees conversation, all of these things I think are just so important to the livability and quality of life of our constituents that we both serve. So I just want to say thank you for your continued leadership and partnership, and especially to the mayor with bringing Amtrak and Council President Clegg, bringing Amtrak to Boise and having that conversation. I think again these are really important conversations, and I'm truly honored and thankful to be hopefully a helpful partner in those conversations.
Yes. I think you can safely say that we all are, and we appreciate the partnership that we've developed, and are looking forward to keeping that going, keeping the momentum going, because as we say, good things happen when everybody works together. So thank you. Any other comments? Commissioner Hanson? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
I'll make it quick.
No,
I just,
no.
thank you, Madam President, thank you, Commissioner. I've heard ITD brought up a couple of times this week. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate at one of these meetings if we could have somebody from ITD join us.
I don't see why not.
That's it.
Great
Thank you
point.
so
Yeah,
much.
absolutely. We'll add that to the list.
Thank you, Madam President.
Absolutely. Commissioner Hanson,
Thank
final
you,
thought?
and I appreciate your comments, Councilmember Clegg, especially as to the Master Street event, because we did not vote on the approval of Master Street event specifically because we had great concerns. I certainly had great concerns that you asked for 17 changes to make it consistent with your land use. Staff recommended only 4 of them, which didn't make sense to me. It's a planning document. It's about land use planning. It seems to me the city should get everything it asks for unless there's some huge obstacle to that. But the reason is because our policies limit your ability to change the master street map that affects your ability to control land use on your own streets. So we have to address that. We can't just sort of talk around it. There has to be some changes to our policies. It's going to be a hard discussion. We got to start that discussion sometime. We did not deal with this, I thought, and with the understanding we'd be doing that at this meeting, but obviously it's going to have to be for a future. Another thing we did not deal with in August was we actually rejected bids on a project on State Street because they were way too expensive. And there are issues the city has on that. We're operating under the assumption that this 10-year-old DBIM actually resolved that, all of those, and things have changed significantly. And this is the segment of State Street, especially between 12th and 14th. And so we need to have that deep dive discussion as to whether it's consistent today after 10 years. This is really what happened, because there's land use changes that are happening in and around 12th, 13th, 14th Street on State Street that didn't exist 10 years ago. So we have to have that discussion. And then, of course, we rejected the notion that you specifically asked for affordable housing when it was under the impact fees. And we said, no, our policies don't allow us to evaluate things like that. As you know, our policies don't allow us to evaluate a lot of things that you can do, not just telecommunications, but affordable housing, affordability issues that you raised, Commissioner Sanchez and Halliburton. It's because of the way our policies are written. And there's been a number of occasions where, because we have parking requirements or access requirements that don't deal with the underlying values that the city wants to promote in that land use, and yet they tend to operate to veto that. And so we need to change those policies. And we even ran into that issue last year when the city appealed, and we found out our policy doesn't even allow you to appeal something that's coming before it. So I think we need to be dealing with these. Perhaps some of these might be work sessions at the city where you invite a few commissioners, and work sessions at ACHD where we invite a few council members, so that we work these out. Otherwise, we just keep kicking them down the road, and I'm afraid because these inconsistent policies continue to be perpetuated, and they don't come to our attention until they're in front of us, so we don't know that.
We'll look forward to those discussions. Sorry to cut you off. We're under a tight schedule here. So Mayor McLean, thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to future meetings. Council members, thank you for joining us. Everybody that was here today and contributed, great discussion.
Agreed.
Look forward to the next one.
Very much, really appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You went to City Hall.
Sorry to run.
No, I know. Look at that.